2011, having already been a cyber journalist for over 10 years at that point, I wrote my first book, When Gadgets Betray Us. I was working in product marketing for an IoT startup at the time, and they wanted everyone in the company to be a CISSP. That stands for Certified Information System Security Professional. Well, I leapt at the chance. Everyone has different paths toward gaining certificates. For the CISSP, you need to pass a test, demonstrate 5 years of experience, and gain the support of 3 current CISSPs. Check, check, and check. The test is now online, but when I took it, it was very old school. There were 270 questions over 8 domains, and it took 6 hours. We were locked in a room with only 2 number 2 pencils and a bottle of clear water. The proctor stood in front. Fortunately, you only had to pass on a score of 70% or better. And I remember my boss at the time urging me to take a week-long seminar that concluded with the test. I went another route. I bought the Sean Harris book, the 1,000-page behemoth, and I worked my way through, spending every waking moment thinking about it. As a journalist, I was told I would be at a disadvantage. In retrospect, I think I had an unfair advantage because I had knowledge in each domain. Not deep, but just enough. I passed on my first attempt. My coworkers vouched for me, and I have maintained active status ever since. So, for me, a CISSP has given a lot of great benefits over the years. But is it right for you? And does it make sense for IoT, OT, and ICS practitioners? The answer might surprise you. This is a story about ISC2 certifications and how they relate to IoT, OT, and ICS. I'm Robert Vamosi. This is Error Code.
I am John France. I am the CISO at ISC2. I've been there for roughly 3.5 years. ISC2, largest professional organization that deals with education and all matters cybersecurity and furthering the profession and actually making it a vibrant and successful board-reaching profession and pursuing the ultimate goal of a safe and secure cyber world.
So when I took the CISSP exam, the company administering it was known as ISC squared. Okay, yeah, I guess the superscript was always a problem for some people.
That's one of the reasons why it's really bad for SEO and in non-Latin languages.
So back in the day, the test I took was very old school. It was paper and it was missing some sections, like it didn't even cover mobile security. Today, it seems like there are more innovative ways of testing people. I'm wondering if John could talk a little bit about how the testing process is today.
So back in the day, as you say, it used to be a linear test. So I can't remember how many questions, but there was a certain number of questions you had to answer. Nowadays, it's an adaptive test. So it's actually a smaller question set, and they're weighted, obviously, according to what's in there and how big a section it is. So the domains have a weighting as well. And if you get some stuff right, really right, it'll ask you less of those. If you get some stuff wrong, it'll double down on that and ask you some more. So instead of the old 6-hour exam, we're now into the happy days of the 3-hour exam. So, roughly half the thing, but it reaches into all of the same nooks and crannies of the profession. So that's how testing has sort of changed over time. And I'm pretty certain that all of our exams are now either adaptive or are about to go adaptive.
So ISC2 offers a broad range of certifications. I only have the CISSP, but there are others. And when I took the CISSP, there were only 8 domains. Are there still 8 domains? How many domains are there today?
Broadly the same number of domains. And the way we keep them current is we look at something called JTAs, which is a job task analysis. In fact, we're duty bound by our ANSI accreditation to go do that, which is to make sure they're relevant and current. So they do ingest new pieces of technology and practice and procedure back into the test. It takes a little while for them to get in there, of course. But the process and part of the adaptive exam questions is that it asks you a bunch of questions that don't count towards your final score, and they are candidate questions to be psychometrically evaluated for future exam banks. So that's how that works. So that's how we sort of keep current, is things actually get put into the domains. Domains stay the same, but what's specifically in there and what's asked about does change over time.
And as I said, they've added certifications over the years. So I'm wondering if John could expand on the wide range of certifications that ISC2 offers today.
Sure. So we offer two things. So certifications is the one that you are aware of. There's 9 of those. Right. So you've got the entry level, that's the CC, which is certified in cybersecurity. Then you've got SSCP, which is the practitioner, and the CISSP on top. Those are the kind of the 3 probably most well known. It used to be that the CISSP had concentrations on top, one in architecture, one in engineering, one in management, but you had to hold the CISSP. That's no longer the case. They're independent. The experience requirements for full certification are tiered somewhat to account for the expertise, but you can go and take them independently. So those are sort of the 3 off the top of the CISSP. And then we have 3 that are broadly domain specific. So we have CGRC, which is governance, risk and compliance. We have a cloud certification to do with cloud technologies. And then we have secure development lifecycle, which is LP, we call it, that deals with all the development chain. So that's our core 9. So that's certifications. We also have certificate programs, which are not quite a full certification, but are testable as well, teachable and testable. And we've actually here just launched our AI building cybersecurity strategy in AI, which is 6 core components to deliver you a certificate at the end.
So John mentioned that as new technology comes in, it gets added to the test. How? How much is there on, say, embedded security or IoT or OT security at this point? Not that these are new technologies, but they're more in vogue.
So, contrary to popular belief, I don't know what all the exam bank questions are. They are tightly guarded, secret, even from me. But I do know there is an element of IoT and OT technology in there. And I think that's partly because it's become relevant. You know, cybersecurity is based on systems engineering, systems thinking. It's just another system. You know, it serves potentially a different sector or a slightly different approach, but it's in there, and it has, to a greater or less extent, always been in there. I think what you're really saying is it's probably the line between what we used to consider operational technology and what we considered sort of information technology has become very much closer. I know back when I was slightly younger than I am now, it was you air gap everything in the sort of in the OT space or SCADA space, and that's how you dealt with your security. You kept it away. We know everything's connected these days, and with that kind of convergence or connectivity, it's a system like any other. And in fact, most, if not all, of the same protections will work for OT technologies as it does for IT technology. So I think there's an element that it's less use case specific and more a general approach to security. But yes, there are some questions in there around some of the OT technologies that you'd be familiar with.
Over the years, I've worked at different companies, and one of the things that we point to is the ISC2 survey and gap that exists with security professionals. So maybe John could explain where the survey is today and where we can improve upon the workforce tomorrow.
Yeah, so I think if you look back, we've asked the same survey a number of years. That not only gives us referential integrity between years, so we repeat the question. So even if you disagree with a specific number, you can look at the direction of travel, I think, which is absolutely relevant. I'll bust another myth, which is the workforce gap currently looms at 4.8 million. That is not the number of open jobs. I wish to stress that. That is a survey of a good number of practitioners and professionals. And that is a desire line of how many roles do we think we need to provide adequate security to the level that is commensurate for good security outcomes. And that is that figure. Actually, for the first time in a long time, is really starting to express itself in the skills gap piece, which is what skills do you need? What skills are the market looking for? And that might be slightly different from the we just need as many bodies in the profession. So I think definitely skills are a key focus in there, and it's not just in the workforce study. We also have a hiring managers report, which looks at sort of the recruitment phase and how to get people into the profession. And that really showed some skills that were not technical, but are very much desired and required. Things like being able to work in a team, critical and logical thinking, curiosity, those type elements. Some of them are teachable, some of them are inherent, but all of them can be encouraged. So I think certification plays part of that as a traditional pathway. And then there's kind of the quid pro quo is when you've hired someone, you give them the opportunity to continue to learn. That's sometimes formal in training and certification, sometimes more opportunistic. You give them the opportunity to learn. So I think it's moved from a one size fits all to look, there are several indicators of good competency and employability, and our surveys have recognized that fact.
And these numbers are global, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we do a little bit of market breakdown in there, but it's a global survey, globally relevant. So one of the things that the workforce study showed was developed market, so the USA, I think, had a ever so slight contraction. Other markets had growth. So in some of the Asian markets, they grew. Broadly, what it did show is a little bit of homeostasis, which is the number hasn't changed year to year. Interestingly, we've seen other sectors they've shrunk slightly. So we haven't lost, but equally we haven't gained. So I think, if you look at some of the reasoning around that, that's rates of change, certain elements of political and geoeconomic instability, and kind of started to push that in. And I think that's probably why the skills have become more important than the number of roles available. And that's what we should be really looking at.
So I want to ask John about this term sector. I'm curious what it means in terms of like verticals, manufacturing or whatever.
It's just a discipline, maybe the IT discipline on its own. We know we've seen some contraction in that space, but the cybersecurity, we've seen on balance, it stayed the same from year to year.
So continuing with that, it has some contraction or particular specific part of it?
I think IT in general, we don't survey for IT, but we can look at some of the indicators of some. It's in the news. You can see it. It's anecdotally discussed as well. So even though I don't have hard data, it's definitely probably a more prominent part of the conversation that has been in the past. So whilst I can't give you a percentage figure, I can definitely reflect some sentiment that it's gone through some contraction.
Turning that around, I'm wondering if ISC2 is seeing a rise in people expressing more interest in OT and ICS.
I think I'll come back to that previous point, which is the lines between traditional IT and traditional OT are now blurred. I mean, IoT really did for that blurring. In fact, anyone that you may not have heard of the term IoT, the general public may not, but they definitely use it every day and rely on it. So I think it's like so many things in the world of technology. Convergence is king here. We're starting to see some of that, and obviously with the machine learning and AI getting put into everything as well, we've got another moment of convergence sort of coming into to make some very interesting applications. And of course, IoT and OT has in large part machine learning in it as well now. So a lot of manufacturing uses machine learning algorithms for efficiency and quality control, and a whole bunch of other stuff that is sort of pushed into that world.
Okay, I appreciate the use of machine learning as opposed to the generic AI.
Well, machine learning, large language models, deep learning, AI, computer vision is a different one. Yeah, I don't just lump into the AI bucket.
Given everything, I'm wondering if John would say that there's maybe a few core skill sets that ISC2 is advocating. For example, something that carries over from certificate to certificate.
So if you look at a lot of our sort of domains and how they break down, they've been around for so long is because they are perennial. Now, the specifics of what goes into the domain and how that translates into good security outcomes practically might change, but principally doesn't. And I think that's what we're really starting to see, which is we've kind of settled on the core set, and it's how they get applied or the specific technologies in them change over time, but the principles don't. So, I'll bring you back to the CIA triad. It's been around for a long time, and it's a cliche because it is still relevant. Confidentiality doesn't equal AES or triple DES. Those are affectations of keeping something secret. And we know that we're going to go through another big crypto change with the advent of quantum potentially. Well, it is threatening asymmetric encryption methods, and we've seen the new candidates come out. So we're into a change of cipher suites again, as we've seen them in the past. So what was gold standard previously, maybe not gold standard anymore, and that's just as technology moves on. And I think as the practitioners, we have a duty of care to keep current with the changing technologies and apply the same principles that we learned many moons ago.
John mentioned the CIA, and we can certainly see where confidentiality and integrity are very strong even today. Carrying over, though, is availability. And I have to question it because it seems like we're in an always-on world. And that strikes me as a little archaic in some ways. Maybe not. Maybe I'm not seeing it correctly.
Yeah, actually, if I, again, a little bit of anecdotal, if you look at ransomware, what did they go after first and foremost? It was originally availability. We lock your data up, you don't have access to it. So I think it's still relevant. What they've now gone after is confidentiality, because we've got good at backups and restorations, which is I haven't lost my data, you haven't locked it up permanently. But then the threat is now I'm going to reveal your secrets. I actually think they may move into the integrity space and start subtly changing data and say, well, your backups now, I've been in system, I've been a persistent threat for 3 months. Pick a backup that's good. I'm just positing that it could be. So I think whilst we consider it as a very much a cliche, it's still very relevant. But yeah, I do buy availability. I think we rely so much on technology in our everyday lives. Actually, we probably rely on it more than we've relied on ever before. And availability is a key thing for that. And if you look at some of the recent outages, even the unintended ones, not attacked, so I think Google had a wobble or the misconfiguration that caused actually quite a lot of angst with certain people couldn't access some of the services that were either directly provided by Google or relied on Google services to be provided. So there's a good example of an availability sort of panic.
John also mentioned quantum, and I've talked to a few experts on error code about quantum cryptography and about the key swapping that will be going on in the future. And the fact that you probably just won't have one encryption technology, but you'll probably have multiples as needed. So I would imagine that ISC2 is building out the cryptography domain to anticipate the post-quantum world we're about to enter into.
Yeah, so actually I'm running a task force that is starting to look at the impacts of quantum. So, I'm not a quantum engineer. I don't pretend to understand the maths, the physics, the material sciences. It's magic. But I can certainly feel the effects of magic. And that's what we're really starting to explore, which is what are the things we may have to do to prepare for quantum. We know that changing cipher suites or crypto suites is going to be inevitable. In fact, if I applaud governments and regulators for actually having the forethought to set competitions up probably a decade ago, they anticipated this. So we do now have, I think it's in the 5 or 6 qualified suites in place, mixture of lattice and hash-based. We know that that's available, so that problem's solved. Principally easy. Move from insecure to secure or resilient, practically hard. There's going to be a lot of change, and that's the bit that I'm starting to look at with the task force and what that might mean for practitioners. Things like crypto agility, which is an asset management, understanding where crypto is involved and how much you rely on it. For developers, it's going to be how do I put these suites into my product line? For consumers, probably most of their world's going to be taken care of them. For at least, phones, tablets, browsers, all that kind of stuff is easy. It's the longer lived stuff. So actually coming back to things like IoT and OT, They tend to be resource constrained and long replacement life cycles, potentially not even supported by the manufacturer anymore. Those are the kind of things that we're going to have to really anticipate what quantum might do, because there is certificate infrastructures in them, which we know are going to be quantum vulnerable.
So here's where it gets dicey. When do we have to start worrying about quantum cryptography? Talk to a few experts. They're saying within 2 years. Others, they're saying we still have a bit more time.
Now, we can argue over whether that's 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, but we know it's coming. And I think that's the real challenge, and we should really start planning for it now.
So I wonder if John could address some of the hiring trends they're seeing at ISC2.
For hiring trends, I think we touched on it briefly, which is we know hiring is expensive. I think the report came in that it's at least $5,000 to hire someone into a cyber position, and it's going to take them a short period of time to get effective as well. That's true. That was reflected. And the stressor in that is looking obviously for good quality candidates, and that's where the skills come into play, I think, and came back really clearly from that. And it's some of those skills that are not technical based. They are the curiosity, critical. Some of the softer skills were shown as a way to well differentiate yourself as a candidate. And also for an employer, you employ for those, the rest can be taught. Quid pro quo is you will teach for the bits of specific knowledge that you need in your organization. So we know that certification plays a part of that, but it is not the singular piece. So that came kind of through clearly in that study. We've also got some other, we do research relatively frequently. Workforce study is the one we repeat year on year. But we have some AI research, and it showed what you would expect, which is it's a double-edged sword. Many security teams are starting to use AI for good security outcomes, but they know it's also going to be a threat to what they have to deal with. There is some concern around how it might change their jobs as well. And we know it's going to change. I mean, personal opinion, I don't think it's going to eliminate entry-level positions at all. It will change the dynamic of what they do. And we talk a lot about signal to noise ratio. I think it's going to try and improve, not going to try, it is improving that to allow a human to make a quicker decision or a more accurate decision. I think where it might run out to is when things happen at machine speed, we have to respond at machine speed. And that's where you start to see that double-edged sword, the attacker versus the defender, both using AI. And of course, we're at Black Hat, and everything is AI on the show floor, and the buzzword is agentic AI. I've seen some interesting sessions on how it's going to help. Here's how you string agents together in the security world. And I've seen some, here's how you can compromise agentic AI. It reminds me of a phrase, which is an indeterminate system, which AI is, tends to be forensically resistant. So understanding how it's made a decision and why it's made a decision is not a linear path these days.
So for someone who wants to go into an OT field, would there be a certification path that might be recommended that may touch upon the skill sets needed to succeed? Or does John think that getting a CISSP, which I have, is the end-all be-all of every security practitioner today?
Well, we know that the CISSP is a gold standard, and it's held as a gold standard because it's long-standing, B, it continues to remain relevant. I think specific certification requirements in OT and IoT, I don't think are required. They are systems built on the same premises that IT systems are built on, so I think it's a good coverage. There's definitely probably some specific pieces of knowledge around those. And we do from time to time run focus sessions and spotlight sessions. So maybe we could look at that as one of the topics in the future. We tend to listen to members and what members want and what they voice to us. So for instance, we've just finished up the AI spotlight or a Dimension AI again, but it was a desired topic. So that's a 2-day virtual session with many speakers. And I think we had one of our record attendances to that. So we had, I think in excess of 8,000 people registered. So far, I think we're a little above 5,000 attendees, because you can do it on a watch back as well. So we're still waiting on that, but really popular. And we do them on other topics as well. We're best known for our certifications, but we have a large body of general education as well. So, we have CPE requirements. We also have the ability to fulfill those through webinars, through other trainings and publications that we do. For instance, I did one on the content change to come. It was a webinar session just for an hour long. I think whilst we're known for one certification, we are so much more than that. And the largest body of professionals in cybersecurity.
So I'm wondering if ISC2 has any benefits for people that maybe don't yet have their certificate.
So I think the number of ways you can get involved with us: becoming a member, which requires certification, is one. We also do a lot of content for non-members. As a member, you get a discount, so I think it's worth becoming a member. That does require getting a certification, but the non-member pricing is pretty competitive in my view, and opens up a large catalogue of learning there. So it's, we embrace the wider community, not just the certified members. But I think we're up around 275,000 certified members. And if you put associates which are waiting to become certified, i.e. they're gaining their experience, and those that have joined us in other means and modes, we're multiples of that core membership number. So pretty big community. In reality, we focus on employability, and we think certification is a key part of that, which is why we maintain CISSP as a gold standard. It's recognized because of that. The actual aspects of finding a job, potentially through the community boards, but also we work, through the hiring managers report, if to reflect some of those trends. There's lots of job boards out there as well, and they do a great job of that.
I'd like to thank John for coming on the show and talking about ISC2 and the certifications that are offered and how they might relate to IoT, OT, and ICS practitioners. Hey, if you're enjoying Error Code, tell a friend. I'm sure there are other people out there who like narrative information security podcasts. And I'd really like to hear from you. Go to errorcodepodcast.com to get more details. And tell me what you like, and even what you don't. I've got some great episodes coming up. We'll have more on Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and hacking utilities supply chains. Subscribe today. I don't want you to miss out.